So it's the end of the fifth inning, I think, over at Globe Life Field, and the Rangers and Cubs are tied as our World Series champion Texas Rangers kick off baseball season 2024 here in North Texas. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. We're going to talk a little bit about baseball a little bit later because I think it really plays into a little bit of what's going on across the country. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. I have an interesting story about my interaction with baseball and how I have a love-hate relationship with it. And I have a strong opinion about sports. I'm a sports fan, and baseball has a problem. We'll talk about that later. But I want to start with your top story. By the way, my name is Jeff. It's West Side Jeff. Sitting in for Chris Crock. Chris is just taking a couple nights off, and I'll be here tonight and tomorrow night. He'll be back on the radio next week. You can find me across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, also on X and Instagram. And you can just interact in the show by pick up the phone and call. I love callers. I think talk radio is a conversation with the community, and that's how I try to approach it. So let's talk. Let's have a conversation. So your top story today is not in Texas. It's not anywhere near Texas. The top story is 4 presidents, living presidents, all in one city, Manhattan, New York City. Tonight, former President Donald Trump is at a wake for a slain New York Police Department officer, NYPD officer, as Trump tries to make a campaign statement, a strong statement on the issue of crime. That's really one of his focal points. Meanwhile, not far from there, probably less than a mile, at Radio City Music Hall, you have current President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, and former President Bill Clinton appearing at a massive Democratic Party fundraiser. Now, tickets at that fundraiser, that's going on tonight, Radio City Music Hall. Tickets for that are as inexpensive as $250 to get in the door. But if you want a picture with 3 living presidents, Biden, Obama, and Clinton, that'll set you back $100,000. And those pictures will be taken by Annie Leibovitz. Leibovitz is a very famous photographer. So you get your picture taken by Leibovitz, who's very, very famous and very well known, with 3 living presidents, cost you $100,000. If you want to attend a private meeting, a get-together after those that session at Radio City Music Hall, it'll cost you $500,000. Now, Democratic Party says tonight's event is going to set a new record to rake in $25 million or more. Well, where do I start on this? By the way, what's going on in New York, I've been watching my phone on this, is there are hundreds and hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters across Manhattan that are making a lot of noise. As I go up and down the TV dial the last couple hours watching what's going on in New York, no matter what network you watch, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, Fox Business News, everybody that's doing live shots there, you can hear those pro-Palestinian protesters making a lot of noise and really putting pressure on the Democratic Party. I have a lot of opinions about this. Again, the name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and have a conversation with you. Let's start with this. You know what? I totally disagree with the policies of the Democratic Party. I don't believe in the policies that they believe in. When I was a kid, you know, I'm 60 years old, just over 60. When I was a kid, the Democratic Party stood for one thing. And my background is I'm born and raised up in the state of Ohio. It's Columbus, Ohio. It was a capital city. My dad was a plumber. He was a Democrat, what I'd call a kitchen table Democrat. My mom was a bookkeeper at a local candy company up there in Ohio, a small business owner. She was a Republican, and they used to go out and vote. And when they'd go vote, my mom would look up and say, "You ready to go?" Cancel each other out, and they would. And so they voted together. But that really shaped my opinion and my belief structure politically in my DNA, because that's where it gets shaped. A lot of things in your life shapes you from the things that you're exposed to. And having a dad who was a Democrat, who was a union card-carrying member, a plumber, who loved his job but hated the union, because this was back in the day and time, if you remember back in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, unions were regularly across the country tapping the master plumbers, master electricians on the shoulder and saying, hey, you got to go sit that unemployment line for a while. We're going to pay you unemployment, but we got to put this new journeyman, this new kid in there, this DEI whole thing. We got to get someone in there that doesn't look like you to give them experience and grow their career. And that just pissed the heck out of my dad. Pissed him off. My dad was a hard worker. When you took tools out of my dad's hand, you were taking money out of his wallet, and it ticked him off. And every day he sat at home as an unemployed plumber because the union said, go sit the unemployment line, just fired him every day. A little bit of it fired every day. So my dad, as he got older, went from being more left to more center left. My mom, on the other hand, really never navigated in the right side. Okay? So that's my background. What's going on tonight in New York City? I got to tell you, I'd love to be there. There's a bunch of angles here. I'm not a Democrat. I don't believe in their policies, but I'd love to be in that building, because let me ask you this question. When in your lifetime have you ever seen a scenario where 4 living presidents were all in one city within probably a mile or two of each other? I can't think of one. Can you? I cannot think of a time when 4 living presidents were all in the same vicinity, and 3 of them under the same roof. I can't ever remember 3 living presidents under the same roof, other than the inauguration of a new president, right? So former presidents will come back to that, but that's outdoors. But imagine being in a building with, I don't know how many people Radio City Music Hall holds, but it's certainly not 1 million people, right? It's probably a couple thousand. But to be under the roof and in the room with 3 living presidents, I think would be fascinating. And if I were ultimately rich and had all kinds of money, I would love to have my picture taken with those 3 living presidents, Biden, Clinton, and Obama. Not because of who they are, not because of the party they represent, not because of the policies they do, but because how many people in life do you know anybody who can say they've got a picture of them with 3 living presidents? I don't. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Again, I don't like the policies. But the other thing is I'd love to go to the private meeting with them too. And I'll tell you why coming up in about 4 minutes. Because there's an angle here with those 3 living presidents in one space and the opportunity to have a conversation with them that I think would be fascinating. And I'd love to be a fly in the wall, if nothing else. And I think you would too. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're hardcore right, hardcore left. I don't care what you believe in. But I think it'd be really hard for you to look me in the eye and say, you know what, Jeff? You know what, Westside Jeff? I have no desire to be there. Because the real human side, I think, would love to be there. I would too. I'll tell you why coming up in 4 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'm sitting in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3. So the name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I was born in the state of Ohio and grew up in Columbus, Ohio, up north, and grew up on the west side. And if you know anything about Ohio, the west side of Columbus is kind of a little gritty, a little blue collar, and that was kind of me. And I did stupid stuff as a kid, and my buddies would just say, "You are so west side," and that's kind of how it got to be Westside Jeff. But you and I first name basis. Just call me Jeff. You want to connect with me? I'm on social media at Westside Jeff on X, also on Facebook, and also on Instagram. Talking about the big story today. The biggest story going on across the country today is 4 living presidents in one city, in New York. And it's interesting to me what they're there for. Trump went there as to participate in a wake for a slain NYPD officer as he is campaigning to make a strong statement on the issue of crime. The three Democrats, and I'm talking current President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, former President Bill Clinton, appearing at a massive Democratic fundraiser. That's at Radio City Music Hall. Can you imagine, put yourself in the position of being in law enforcement, not only Secret Service guarding the president. Have you ever met somebody in Secret Service guarding the president? I have. I'll tell you about that coming up in about 12 minutes because I have great stories about some inside things from Secret Service members guarding the president. Fascinating story. Again, that's coming up in about 12 minutes right after the news. Coming up bottom of the hour news, by the way, Sean Allen, we were talking during the break. He's got the latest news on Diddy's home raid. And talking something about a Home Depot merger. He said he's still working on that. That's coming up at the bottom of the hour news in about 10 minutes. But three presidents from one party, the Democratic Party, all three under the same roof in New York City at Radio City Music Hall for a fundraiser that is expected to raise $25 million. I would be fascinated to be there. I'm just intrigued by the concept of being in one room, face-to-face, nearby, three living presidents. When in your lifetime can you remember in a building, inside of a building, three living presidents, one current, two former? I don't ever recall that other than the inauguration of a president, but that's outdoors. So it'd be fascinating to be there. And they're charging $100,000 to have your picture taken with those three presidents. And the picture will be taken by Annie Leibovitz, and $500,000 for a private meeting with the three former Democratic presidents. Again, I don't like the policies. Joe Biden, I'm not so sure he knows he's president. Barack Obama, hell, when he was in office, he was run for re-election. He sat down with a guy named Joe the Plumber from Toledo, Ohio, and sat down and had a beer. Because if you remember the story, Joe the Plumber came out and really made a name for himself that was important for the state of Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and the Rust Belt area. So Barack took a meeting with him. They sat down, had a beer. My dad was a plumber, so you got to appreciate the fact the former president sat down with a plumber. I'm a plumber's son. And Bill Clinton, well, you know what? Bill Clinton likes girls. I like girls too. So I've got something in common with these guys. Joe's got dementia. My best friend is in a nursing home facility, a memory care facility, because at age 58, he was diagnosed with it. So there's my connection with Biden. Barack having a beer with a plumber during his campaign years ago. And Bill likes girls. So there's my connection. I would love to be in the room with three former presidents, or two former presidents and a current president. And I'd love the opportunity to sit down and just talk to them, not necessarily policy and not necessarily shop, but non-shop stuff. I'm that kind of guy that when you meet me personally and we're out and about, I've actually had people say to me, you ask too many questions. If you're writing a book, skip that chapter. I don't ask questions. I come off sometimes as interrogative. I'm not interrogating people. I'm just intrigued. I'm a information seeker. That's what I do. I love talking to people and asking questions to find out more about them, what makes them tick, how they got to where they are. I'm fascinated with how people make money. I'm fascinated with how people get to where they are in life and what challenges they face to get there. And I think the stories you'd hear from a current president, if he remembers, and two former presidents, I think would be fascinating. The other thing about those three presidents together, I'd love to be in that room where you spend $500,000 or more to be in one room with three presidents and watch them interact. Because I'd be interested to just be a fly in the wall and see which one is the alpha male. I would guess that the leader of the pack is Obama. I could guess that Biden would be sitting back and he's got the title of president, so there's some element of importance because he's currently president, but I think the leader of the pack would be Obama, talking policy and stuff like that, and Clinton would be throwing jabs out there and talks out there about women, about chicks, about stuff like that, guy stuff. That's my perception, but I may be off on that. So I think it'd be fascinating to be there. Now, Trump is there again because he's there. It's a campaign trip, obviously, and he's making a point about strength on crime, on fighting crime. But outside, in and around New York and Manhattan, you'll see video out there across social media. There's a lot of protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters across Manhattan are making a lot of noise. And here's what I got to say about that. I continually watch news media, Fox and others, kind of ripping on the Democrats for ignoring the pro-Palestinian folks. It's almost like the Republicans, the talking heads, the Fox heads, they're all making fun, making a high-level fun joke about Democrats getting hassled, getting peppered by pro-Palestinian protesters across the country. And my attitude about that, my opinion about that is this. Y'all better be careful about that because the Republicans haven't got that figured out either. So it's not like we have it figured out and they don't. Neither side does. My opinion on the whole Palestinian-Hamas thing is it's not our war. It's not our problem. It's not us to be deciding who wins, who loses. It just isn't. We got to stay out of it. It's between them. They've been fighting forever. Let them fight. We should give support where it makes sense, but it's not our war. And if I'm in office and somebody's asking me about it, my stance is real simple. It's not our war. It's between them. It's between them. So that's my attitude. By the way, I've got some fascinating stories about, I mentioned a moment ago, about Secret Service and about presidents. I'll cover that in about 6 minutes, or 8 minutes right after the bottom of the hour news, about meeting Secret Service members who have guarded the president. But when you get this many presidents in one place, in one city, it's going to be very compelling. And I'm all about very compelling. I'm about interesting. This is going to be the longest presidential election in our lifetime. Game is on. It started. It is in full swing, and it's going to go on for the better part of this year through November. And quite honestly, I think it goes past November. I don't think it's over the day after the election or 2 days or 3 days. I think it's going to carry through Christmas, unfortunately. And I think it's doing that because of a more pronounced and larger media platform than ever before with the enhancement of social media as well as traditional media. It's going to be a long process. That's the key. So strap in, get ready. On the other side of this, we've got Sean Allen coming up in about 3 minutes with an update on something going on with Home Depot here in North Texas. On the other side of that, I want to talk about some inside secrets I heard from Secret Service members who guard the president. And I'll tell you what that's about coming up in about 5 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'm in for Chris Kroc here on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Nice to be here. Nice to talk with you. Big story tonight is 3 Democrat presidents. Current one, Biden, previous one, Obama, and previous one, Bill Clinton, are all 3 in New York City tonight at a big fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall. I'm going to tell you in about 60 seconds about an experience I had with some Secret Service members and tell you the story behind it and some of the insights give you. That's the kind of stuff I like to know. Just the quirky stuff. I'd love to be in that building, by the way, with the 3 presidents. Not just to be in the building, but I'd love a sit down one-on-one with them, just to ask stupid, quirky stuff. Simple things like, what's the president? You know what I'd ask? And that's a question I want to throw to you. If you were in the room in New York tonight with 3 presidents, Biden, Clinton, and Obama, and you had a chance to talk to them, what would you ask them? What would you like to know? For me, it's quirky stuff. It's not policy and political stuff. I'd ask quirky stuff, like some of the things I'm curious about. What's the president's private bathroom like? Do you have a shower in there with like 8, 10, or 12 heads with tremendous water pressure that are jets coming out of everywhere and it's always hot? Or is it like my shower that is like just a typical shower? I want to get in, get out because it's I want to be pelted with water in a shower. Now, my house, thank God I built it. I've kind of got something like that. But I also take baths. I grew up in a house with baths. So I'd ask, do you have a bathtub in there that you can take a bubble bath in? And you ever do it? Another thing I'd be curious about with a president or former presidents, you ever sneak out of the White House? I mean, we know Michelle Obama at one time did. I remember her putting on some nondescript clothing and secret. She pushed her way into it and said, I'm going shopping. She went to Target. I remember seeing the pictures going, how's the first lady get out of the White House, go to Target kind of undercover without ever being covered? That's fascinating to me. And I get it. If our prisoner in the White House of being the president of the United States, whether it be a current one or previous one, I'd feel landlocked. I mean, there's something to be said about being catered to, but you know what? I just want to get behind the wheel of the car and drive it. Wouldn't you miss driving? I would. That'd be another question. Do you miss driving? You know, we know Biden's got a vet in his garage up in Delaware. Do you miss it? I mean, there's just sometimes, I still have the first car I ever bought. It's a 1967 Ford Galaxie 500. It's in my garage. I got it out over the weekend. I took it up to the shop to get worked on. $1,500 work. We can talk about that later. Sometimes I miss driving. Wouldn't you? 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. What would you ask the president if you had a chance? The three presidents. You're in front of them. What would you ask them? 800-288-9227. By the way, I was talking about when's the last time you had so many living presidents under one roof at one time? I got a message messenger on Facebook from Rick Hatcher. Rick, thanks for listening. Said, hey, Jeff, in attendance in the same room for Ronald Reagan's funeral were Presidents George W. Bush, H.W. Bush, Ford, Clinton, and Jimmy Carter. Love your show. And I forgot about that. So, Rick, thank you for that. I shot back a note, said, that's right, I forgot about that. It's been a few decades now since that happened. And those conditions are very different than tonight. Something tells me tonight you get those three presidents in one room, and the conversations that you could have with them would be very different than certainly the mood at a funeral. So if you're in the room with three former presidents, Biden, Clinton, Obama, what do you ask them? Let's not go into policy, that kind of stuff, and blah, blah, blah. What would you really want to know? I'm always intrigued. Another thing I'd want to know is Obama in particular. Remember when he took office, he was pretty hell-bent about this. He said, I'm going to use my own cell phone. He walked, I think he had a BlackBerry, but he went in and said, I'm going to use my own phone. And that was a big story at the time because he wanted to use his own cell phone. I would too. Don't take my phone away. I want it in control. Those are some of the questions. So a few years ago, God, it's more than a few years ago, it's back when I lived up in Ohio. And I was at an event for a radio station I worked for in Ohio. And it was the weekend before the re-election for George Bush, the son. And he did an appearance in downtown Columbus at Nationwide Arena. It's a big concert facility. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was there. And they do it's a get out the vote kind of rally is what they did. Well, he jumped on, he spent the night in Columbus that night. He jumped on Air Force One the next morning, Saturday morning, flew to Grand Rapids and who knows where from there. I think Chicago, Milwaukee, and a bunch of other places over the course of the weekend. And I ran a big party on Ohio State's campus around OSU football that had a couple thousand people show up. If you've ever been up in Ohio, you'd know it. It's called Heinegate. I was, because the radio station kind of ran the radio side and the entertainment side. And the guy who ended up being the chief of police in the city of Columbus was a commander at the time. He comes up to me and he says, hey, Jeff, I got some friends in from out of town. Do you mind if I have them into your private party? I said, sure. Friends of yours are friends of mine. So he has them in. I said, yes, no problem. So I told our staff, our team, let them in. I don't know who they are. That's fine. He brings them up and introduces them to me. And the three guys, one of them hit the genetic jackpot. The guy was like 6'4", gorgeous stud, man. This guy was just, I'm thinking, here I am, this short little dumpy guy, and this guy got it all. And the second guy was just a normal looking guy. And the third guy was kind of a shorter, stockier, kind of looked like maybe at one time played defensive back in football. So the commander introduces me to these guys, and he tells me that they are Secret Service for the president, George Bush, the son. And I'm like, wow, I'm fascinated. So I went to shake their hands as I typically do. I shake their hand and kind of pat them on the back, it's handsy kind of thing. And I realize as I'm patting him on the side there, the big tall guy, because of his height, I'm patting him on the area that is kind of a rib cage area, and I feel that's a big gun. I got my hands off him at that point. I'm like, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. So we were just talking about college football because it was a college football event. One of them went to Michigan State, graduated Michigan State. One of them graduated LSU, and the other one was Northwestern. So we started talking about college football, Big Ten football, SEC football. And as the conversation went, again, I'm an inquisitive guy. And, I don't ask your standard questions sometimes. And sometimes I go a little overboard. I kind of get to the point where I can interrogate people. And I asked them a couple questions that kind of created some conversation. Again, we're talking about Secret Service to the President of the United States. They're in town. The first question I ask, if you're Secret Service for the President, and he just left this morning, why aren't you with the President? Well, they all kind of looked at each other and kind of said they really didn't know. They knew. I found out later they knew. They just, there are just some things they're not going to answer, and they didn't want to be rude and say, you're asking something you can't ask me, and I can't answer it. So I appreciate their not telling me, hey, you dummy, you can't ask me those stupid questions, and I can't answer them, so don't go there. So I continued to pepper them because I sometimes don't know when to stop. So I'm asking them some questions about the president. What was it like the night before being in Nationwide Arena in downtown Columbus with George Bush and Mrs. Bush and the Bush family, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and some other stars showed up, and just talked a little bit about it in Columbus and what Columbus was like, and did they get a chance to see Columbus? And they all three pretty much said, no, we didn't see any of Columbus. We are connected to the President of the United States. We don't leave his side. And when he jumped on Air Force One this morning, now we have free time, so we decided to stick around. The commander here is a good friend of ours. We wanted to hang out and go take in an Ohio State game. It was Ohio State playing Penn State. So I get in some real interesting questions. And I'll tell you what those are coming up in about 5 minutes because it's real fascinating what I asked them and what they had to say. So I'll tell you that coming up in about 4.5 minutes. But I got to ask you again, if you were in the same room with three presidents, one current president, two former presidents, what would you ask them? What would you like to know? What would you like to know from three presidents, living presidents? What would you ask them? 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. Again, 4 minutes from now, I'll tell you what else I got into with the three Secret Service guys, and it was fascinating what they had to say. You won't believe some of the things they have to do and how they engage with that. I'll tell you that in 4 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 WBAP. And now on FM at 93.3. The name is Westside Jeff. Just call me Jeff. Sitting in for Chris tonight. Chris Crock is off tonight, tomorrow night. He'll be back Monday. I get a chance to sit here and just give you a common sense opinion on current events. Current event, biggest story going on tonight, today is you have four living presidents in New York City. One there, Donald Trump, is there somewhat campaigning, but quite honestly, he's there for a wake for a slain NYPD officer as he makes a real strong statement on the issue of crime. The other three, current President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, and former President Bill Clinton, all three Democrats, are there to appear at a massive Democratic fundraiser. Now, tickets as cheap as $250 a ticket to get in there. But if you want a picture taken with the three living presidents by Annie Leibovitz, it'll cost you $100,000. If you want a private meeting with them, I don't know the details what that looks like. It costs you $500,000. I'd be fascinated to do that. I wouldn't want to give the money to the Democratic parties because I just don't agree with their policies and their agenda. But to be in one room, in the same spot, in the same room with three living presidents, a current one and 2 former ones, all 3 of the same party, a party I don't agree with. I wouldn't get into the political implications, political side, but I'd get into specifics about what's it like to be president, just some stupid stuff that I'm really inquisitive about, that they could talk about. A few years back, one of the things I'd ask them is what I'm going to tell you in 60 seconds. A few years back, born and raised in Ohio. I lived in Columbus, Ohio for many years before sitting here in the studio talking to you. And when I lived up in Columbus, I was part of a radio station that did a big pregame and postgame tailgate party around Ohio State football. Long story short, the guy who ended up being chief of police up in Columbus had come to me and said, "Hey, Jeff, you do a private party. We have some friends in town. Do you mind if they come in?" It was the weekend before George Bush's reelection date. I said, "Yeah, that's fine." He had them in and he introduced them to me. They were 3 Secret Service guys who guard the president. So the president of the United States, George Bush, the son, had taken off that Saturday morning for Grand Rapids and several other campaign stops. It was a weekend before Election Day. These 3 guys left behind. I said, "So if you guys guard the president, why aren't you with the president?" And they kind of looked at each other and they didn't want to answer. Well, they knew the answer, and I ended up finding out the answer. They just didn't want to tell me. The reality is the president of the United States was coming back to Columbus, Ohio on Election Day. He went to the campaign headquarters in downtown Columbus and made calls. I remember watching TV news that night where he literally is on the phone calling people who were registered Republicans. And George Bush says, "Yeah, it's the president of the United States. Did you get out and vote yet?" He said, "No, really, this is George Bush, the president of the United States." "No, really, ma'am, it is. Hold on just a second." And he hands the phone to a woman and says, "So-and-so, that is the president of the United States." He's calling from the campaign offices. It truly is. Now, please say hello to him. They hand him back the phone. He said, "Now you believe me?" I could see that happening, being a prank call. You think it's a prank call. So the Secret Service guys are there, and I'm asking them interesting questions I'm curious about. And one of the questions I asked them, I got into, is what's it like on Air Force One? And they said, "You know what? It is very different than flying commercial." He said, because we are on the plane with the president. As soon as the president hits the airplane, he said, you'll notice as soon as the president, literally the foot hits the door, Air Force One is rolling. So we are one of us is getting him in his seat, making sure he's in the right spot, while the other ones of us are shutting the door. And since he told me that, I've watched, they're right. The Secret Service guys are closing the doors, the plane's moving. And he said, so we're doing that. And he said, we don't wait to take off. We are right there and ready to go. So our plane is up in the air. He said, it's not uncommon as a Secret Service member on Air Force One that we are still going through the process of locking things down on the plane when wheels are in the air. So that's very typical for them because there ain't no waiting. It's not like you and I, we don't get in line. They're there, they're on, the president's on the plane, they're gone. See ya, goodbye. And he said flights are real quick. So like a flight from, again, I lived in Columbus, Ohio at the time, from Columbus to Chicago, which normally might take an hour, they get there in 40 minutes, sometimes 35. He said, so there's no time to do anything. I said, what's the food like on Air Force One? Well, I'm standing with a group of 3 Secret Service guys and the guy that ended up being chief of police up in Columbus, Ohio when I lived there. And I said, what's the food like on Air Force One? The 3 guys stopped talking to me and they turned to each other and said, it's expensive. And they start talking amongst each other. And I'm like, well, what? Huh? So those 3 start talking about the food on Air Force One being expensive. And I said, wait, you guys don't pay for food. And they all stopped and looked at me and said, yeah, we do. I'm like, wait, Secret Service agents, you got to pay for food? And they said, yes. I said, what, you got cash? You pull it out and say, here you go? And they said, no. And one of them pulled out a P card and showed it to me. It's a State Department card. So I'm like, wait a minute, Secret Service guys got to pay for food? You're on Air Force One, you're in the White House? Camp David, everywhere you go, Pentagon? They said, yes. Anywhere we go, we have an expense account. We can't go over that expense account. And if we do, we pay for it out of our own pockets. I'm like, really? That's stupid. And I said, you said it's expensive. How expensive? Well, this is back in it was Bush's re-election year. I have to think about what year that was, 04? And the guy said, the other day we flew from here to here. It was a 20-minute, 30-minute flight, and I just barely had enough time to eat. I had to eat something. I had a salad and iced tea, and it was $23. Now, this was 04. And I'm like, whoa. Salad and iced tea, $23? Wow. So Secret Service guys, at that time, I assume it's still the same, are paying for food wherever they are. They have an expense account like most business people do. And when they go over, they got to pay out of their own pocket. So I said to him, where's the food better for you? Is it better on Air Force One, in the White House, in the Pentagon, at Camp David? Where's it better? And each of them had a different answer. And then I said, what's the best food that you've had? And then they all started talking. One of them talked about homemade chocolate chip cookies. Another one said the salads are phenomenal. One said the ribs is great. So it was interesting hearing them talk about that. Well, the big guy, Secret Service guy, was a driver of what they call the Beast. And I said, what is it like driving the Beast? And he told me some things about driving the Beast, how it's first of all, it goes wherever you want. And he didn't get into confidential stuff that would, that he can't get into. But he said it's a very, very, very heavy vehicle, as you might imagine, and it's sound tight. So we talked about some specifics about that. I said, what happens if the Beast breaks down? I'm driving my car. That stuff happens. What happens? And we talked about they've got protocols for that, what they do and how they do it. Interesting conversation. So my question to you is, if you were in the room with 3 living presidents, like you could be tonight at New York at a fundraiser, and you had private time with the president, not necessarily talk about policy, what would you ask him? You heard what I asked. I'd like to hear what kinds of things you'd ask. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'm in for Chris Kroc. You can hit me up at 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP, Westside Jeff in for Chris Kroc on News Talk, 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3.